come to meeting point. One of the greatest, so to say, problems that has bedeviled Nigerians is the average perception, even among us, that most Nigerians are not as patriotic as they are supposed to be. Most Nigerians are concerned with the situation of lawlessness and corruption among Nigerians generally, which experts attribute to lack of patriotism and lack of selflessness among most of our citizens. However, there are a series of enlightenment campaigns to remind them on the need to be patriotic citizens and also contribute their quota to the development of their country. Program, therefore, today on Meeting Point invites some patriotic Nigerians who are at the forefront of the struggle to rebrand the country's image. Our guests today are, by my immediate right, Mr. Dominic Daton, a development expert and a social activist. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Also privileged to have another development worker and peace worker, Dr. Imran Abdurrahman from the Center of Conflict Management and Peace Studies, University of Jos.
Thank you very much. Hello, viewers.
Well, I am yours sincerely, Than Ibn Saleh. To set the ball rolling, any one of you can take up this issue. In any case, we will be rubbing our minds together. What is the relationship between love for one's country and the country's development? Maybe let me begin with Mr. Dominic.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. You know, love is like magic, even in normal life. Whatever you give love to normally thrives. It's same in families. If you have a dog, you give him lots of love, he's fresh, and so on. So for the same reason, a country needs to be nurtured, and the nurturing of a country needs to be with love. When you have love for your country, you do things with dedication. Whatever position you find yourself, you do it with dedication because you feel indebted to the country as yours.
Imran.
Yes. Looking at the level of love required, because love itself, affection, requires that there should be that desire to see the system above yourself. So Nigerians, if you belong to a nation, loving that nation means you think of what you can offer to that country. There will be that desire to contribute to the betterment of everybody, not just yourself. So it will remove selfishness. It brings about commitment to the well-being of everybody. And in essence, you will now be committed to development of the community. So you are ready to service the community you are living in. You are ready to cooperate with others who are willing to put their specialization to use for the betterment of the nation. And that's why you said Nigerians are not committed to volunteerism. Everybody's looking for what is going to get from the nation, not what is going to give to the nation. And so the patriotic call that think of what you are going to give to your nation, not what you are going to get. It's not that you kill yourself, but you will discover that some people join the military. One of the ethos of joining military is giving your life to the nation. If you don't, like, people question the political economy of the military, who are just interested in the money they will make at the expense of people's lives, with all those things that are happening in terms of corruption in Nigeria, it put to question people in charge of our security, our nation. Are they actually people with love for the people who will service the nation selflessly for the betterment of everybody? So that you cannot see somebody who has love for the nation diverting resources meant for fighting insurgency or health issues. So it brings to question issues of corruption. How selfless are we when you divert budget meant for health? One's family will be sick, your own family can go out because you've stolen the nation's resources.
So in other words, there is a correlation, deep correlation between love for one's country and the development of that country.
Exactly.
So, Dominic, let me come back to you. Why are Nigerians generally perceived to be less patriotic? If you compare us with citizens of even neighbor countries like a Nigerian or a Tanzanian, what is less in our own that we are perceived? Even generally, if you go, people will tell you in the streets that, hey.
Okay, there's this issue of a nation, and then this issue of nation states, and then the national identity. Nations are defined by sometimes culture, sometimes language, sometimes in some instances it's even religion, that a group of people have a same way of life. However, in recent times, I think in the 16th century or so, after the Treaty of Westphalia.
Okay.
1694.
Yeah, 16,
84.
yeah, something like that. The issue of nation state came about, and states that look at the issue of nation state better than the various nations that form them, which are mostly primordial sentiments, like, okay, he speaks the same language with me, then he's my brother, we attend the same church or the same mosque, he's my brother, and so on. So we take that beyond the sentiments we attach to the nation state. Nigeria is a nation state that has a lot of nations within it, a lot of nations. And unfortunately, for a nation, the primitive nation, the definition of the national identity of the person is defined naturally, because we speak the same language, because we have the same culture. But in nation states, the identities that really characterize them are supposed to be, for example, economy, for example, health care system. What is your identity as a people? Because if you go back to your primordial identities, you only have conflicts within yourselves, and that's what happens within our country. You go to an organization, just as you were saying, somebody wants to take money that does not belong to you, because you want to go and serve the needs of your nation, your primordial nation. We talk about sharing of resources
What
on
we call national cake.
exactly, based on you are Hausa, you are Igbo, you are Yoruba, and so on. We don't have a national identity that we can really, put our lives on. If we have a national identity and we are patriotic.
After 57 years of independence.
Yeah, but it's unfortunate, but we don't have it. We don't have it. See, even as we are seated here, if you talk about Germany today, they will tell you that they make strong trucks. And I tell you, whether you're a private person or you're a government person or whatever you are, you work towards producing a truck that will not fail, because once the truck moves out of Germany, it becomes the face of the German state, the German national state. So whatever mistake you do on a car that is coming out of Germany tells on Germany. That's why sometimes you see that companies can even recall cars, because they don't want to tarnish the image of their own country.
Okay, let me come to Imran now. But while you wish to react to this particular question as to why Nigerians are perceived to be less patriotic, I want you to, based on what Dominic has said, juxtapose it with what we are seeing today in Somalia, because they are all Muslims, they are all Arabs, so to say, or Somalis. Look at South Sudan.
Mostly Christians.
They are mostly Christians, and that is why they fought to separate themselves from the greater Sudan, we know. And look at India, with its polyglot of religions and identities, yet And here we are today. When you are talking about homogeneity, does not make nation state.
Thank you very much. First, the issue of being less patriotic, simplistically, people associate with the pluralistic nature of Nigerian state, which is not necessarily always a true such assertion, because you have, just as we mentioned of India, so Nigerian state, or in our case, people are less patriotic for several reasons. One, we lack a systemic approach to issues. So people can use the primordial factors to say, okay, you get access to something, not just because you are qualified.
That's by way of manipulation.
Manipulation, some of them is that we are not growing on a number of issues. State formation process demands that at a particular point after the First Republic, Nigeria needed to allow for representation. And by 73, the indigenization process demanded that you provide people access to federal character, quota system, and all this. Just like Babangida said about 4 years ago, we should have outgrown this to set better criteria for access so that we have enough resources. We should be working to provide for everybody, no longer quota representation. But the problem is multifaceted. The politicians know the problem, but if you improve the system to go out of quota system, like Section 47, that demands that every state or unit must be represented in appointing ministers and the rest of them. So politicians will not allow you to unify that eligible people should get a position. So quota system is still allowing for representation, but it's not helping matters. They're still competing. So in the process, some people have advantage over others, and then the corruption process cannot be addressed because of favoritism. If a government is not performing, he looks at, what will I accuse? Okay, is the other group that are saying this. So you find a way of saying, well, it's because they are opponents, or it's because they are of that ethnic group or of religious beliefs. So those are the political factors that are making individuals to look, the system is not protecting me in terms of reward system for the work. The rate of inflation is not commensurate. The system is not working. We don't have a system. What you have is more of individualistic prioritization. And that's why workers will go on strike for several months. There's no commitment. So why will you be working and few individuals just sit down, legitimately appropriate funds to themselves?
What you are saying, in other words, is that, and maybe this, I should throw this question to Dominic specifically. What you are saying, you are free to react. What you are saying, by implication of what Imran is saying, is that since independence, all these our national development plans that we have been making are to naught.
Okay, you see, there's one thing with a plan and policies and so on. When you make a plan and you do not communicate it down to where it will be implemented, then it's not a plan. You have a plan that is seated somewhere that, you know, just as he said, we're supposed to work as systems. The national plan should be keyed into by the states. The states will have its local governments key into the national plan through the states. Even individuals, even private organizations should key into that. But when we don't have, or when we have, as you said, and we don't communicate it, then I don't know it, and I cannot effect what I don't know. So that communication process may be what is lacking with our national, our development. That is, if the development plan itself is really good enough, because most of the time we don't normally sit down to really criticize ourselves. We don't criticize ourselves, and when things fail, we find it easy to blame others. just as he was saying, we find it easy to blame others. And instead of sitting back to say, okay, how do we do it better? How do we change it? How do we change this aspect that is giving us the wrong output? How do we tweak it to get the correct output?
Okay. Yes.
That is addressing the drivers of being unpatriotic in Nigeria. What are the things that drive people? Some people are ready to. Well, we don't all share the definition of patriotism. What do we mean by being patriotic?
Okay.
What level of sacrifice does that demand? What kind of attitude does that demand? And then which system am I keen into to make me patriotic? So, but what is driving people to behave? So you talk of being patriotic in terms of loyalty to the purpose of the state. So working to ensure that we remain one and we are developing in terms of economic development, social distribution, and the rest of them. But factors that are working against it are numerous. One, in Nigeria, the injustice factor, what do you call it, experiencing act of injustice from security or from other sector of society come from just look, if you don't have power, if you are not rich in Nigeria, nobody will take care of you. You go to the hospital or on the street, there's demand for justice, and the system is not working. The government or the security agency say, look, for us to attend to your issue, somebody has just exploited you using his power. You can report to the police, you go there and says, we can't go and arrest him, we don't have warrant to arrest him, or there's no fuel in the car. There's not. So there are a lot of factors that prompt you to look, I must get rich. I'm not saying it's rational to do it, but frustration is putting a number of people to act in unpatriotic manner. Civil servants, people ask why the corruption in the police, in the civil service. Somebody's thinking, after leaving this office, what happened next? So, and those in power, as the political office holders too, are also behaving with that mentality. They are the ones to restructure the system to work. They are also thinking of, look, I know a governor or know a deputy governor in the past who, after leaving office, barely 3 years after, he's begging for a sum of 5,000 to fuel his car. So that would never happen to me. So a governor comes in within 1 week, is thinking of how to accumulate. So he's not thinking about the people. It's just rhetoric. So these are factors that lead to this unpatriotic factor. Now, homogeneity will not solve the problem. That, okay, because people like in Sudan, you go to clan. From clan, you go to family level. From family level, you go to your individual selves. So you can see in Nigeria where even within the families, some people are fighting each other because of resources. So the system needed to be more effective to provide a level playing ground for everybody. And the system will check itself. There's no way there's no corruption. But once it becomes public, people take dignity. So just like General Shola Williams said, most Nigerians suffer from AIDS, acquired integrity deficiency syndrome. Because people are deficient of integrity, so there's no shame to any act they will conduct. And so there are no mentorship. If we take the younger ones now, there's no future for Nigeria. Listen to a 10 years or 14 years old boy or girl, her aspiration, she's not thinking of a career. What do you want to be in future? I want to ride a beautiful car, I want to do this. Is that contribution to development? So there's need for reorientation.
So rights and orientation begins from parenting.
Parenting, mentorship, a workable system, and then better reward system. You don't have a government working in a way that you ask yourself, is this a government of a country where you are allowing interest rate, inflation to rise geometrically? The price of electricity in the last 2-3 years has increased from 11 naira per unit for commercial to 40 something naira per unit. It burned faster. Petrol has gone from 87 to 145. the same salary will buy this. You are putting people under pressure. You've banned importation of items. So the government of the people must look that if you are trying to regularize the system, there must be a human face to it. That's why in the past there were always palliative measures. You think holistically. Don't think so. It means the government, each ministry is working as if they are private sector meant to optimize profit.
Well, let's look at this issue of some of these common crimes that are bedeviling the country. Talk about youth restiveness, kidnapping, harassment, farmers crashes, general incidents of insecurity. What has led us to this level that life seems no longer to be sacred? I mean,
you see, one of the most basic problems of this our country is injustice. Injustice could be in law, social injustice, you know, and so many other classifications of injustice that you could do. At a point, citizens would rely on government for succor, maybe when they have issues. But they keep doing it and the government keeps failing. They do it, government fails, they do it. So at a point, they'll say, okay, why don't I become independent? Let me give you an example. Maybe an armed robber visits a neighbor of mine. He calls the police and the police says no petrol. And he was expecting that, okay, if he called, they would immediately come to respond. And he goes to his neighbor, this is what happened. I called the police, they said there was no petrol, and then they killed my child or my wife or whatever. The other guy says, okay, since he called the police, he didn't come. If I call the police, he won't come also. So I will buy my own gun. Initially, it was for protection. But I tell you, when he has a chance outside protection to use the gun, he will use it. Maybe one day he would, maybe a friend of his, he just had a quarrel and I have a gun. I have power.
In the fit of anger,
you go and use it. So all these things gradually build up. People becoming independent from the state. They become independent from the state gradually, and now people are very independent from the state. You provide water for yourself, you healthcare for yourself, transportation for yourself. No, there's nothing that government coordinates. We're not saying that government should provide, but let them coordinate. Let's have a system that, you know, when you key into it, you will know that, okay, if I put a certain input into it, I have a certain output. But we are doing things haphazardly. We provide everything. You provide water for yourself, security, and everything. So,
okay.
Now,
let me say this.
Okay.
Human life is no longer separate because people have gotten used to violence. Past violence, the previous experience in terms of communal violence and proliferation of small arms unchecked, politicization of issues, and the merchant of debt among the political class. I mean the youth, the teeming unemployed youth. Rather than giving them jobs, to empower them to learn how to fight or to use arms and acquire the arms and give to them, giving them allocation while trying to use them for elections. After elections, they don't have access to anything. Now the arms is at their disposal. He's an angry person. He's into drugs. Some of those interviewed, we've had workshops dealing with the issue of drug abuse and all this. Some of the graduates and other people are non-graduates today, including women. So you should know the dimension of it's getting more alarming in terms of people becoming animalistic level of not the killer kind of carnivorous animals that will can kill within 5-10 minutes. Give an individual to the boys in 5 minutes, he will be dead. They are into drugs. So at the time they are operating because they are against the state. They are not happy. Dead, no job, no social scheme. The cost of living is always on the rise. No family. The family ties is already getting weakened because of the economic situation we're in. So that because of previous violence and anger from previous violence, you have quite a number of teeming youths that can be used for violence during election, as we have election coming. So we get to see that life is already meaningless. The political class are behind it. And because of lack of political will by those in government, they enjoy immunity, kind of.
So, well,
impunity. And then, sorry, let me say this one. Kaduna.
We have run out of time. We, as a matter of, have to continue this discussion next week. So we should take your place. We come back next week. Well, on this place, viewer, we have to call it a day now, but I'm sure the issue has not been discussed to its logical conclusion. So keep a date with us, same time, same station next week as we continue with this topic. But thank you very much for sparing the time. On behalf of all those who contributed to making the program the success that it is, I remain yours sincerely, Than Ibn Saleh. Say, continue to watch NTA.